Hello and welcome to another episode of Earth911, Sustainability in Your Ear. I'm your host, Mitch Ratcliffe. We're back with another innovator interview, and today we're talking about how to build a sustainable brand with author and business advisor David Radlo. He's an early and successful advocate for sustainable practices who's lectured at Tufts University and New York University's Stern School of Business. David built a premium organic egg brand, well, several of them, at Born Free, Farmer's Best, and Eggland's Best. And he has a new book, Principles of Cartel Disruption, which explores how to break down the barriers to new forms of business. And that, of course, is a skill we need to master in order to break petrochemicals' hold on the economy. You can learn more about David and his new book at www.davidradlo, that's R-A-D-L-O, davidradlo.com. Welcome to the show, David. How are you?
Thank you very much, Mitch. Delighted to be here.
Well, thank you. First, one of the reasons we wanted to talk to you is you've been very blunt. You've said that companies can no longer play at sustainability, but need to get serious about the transition to using renewable energy, sustainable manufacturing practices and distribution programs, and end-of-life recycling. Can you describe for our listeners what that sustainable economy will look like, so we have sort of a goal in mind as we start this conversation?
Sure, happy to do that. With where we are right now is going towards an era of full transparency, so that you as a consumer will have the opportunity to go to a website and find out the key indicators that you're looking for, and businesses will have an opportunity to showcase the advantages they have. For example, are they locally produced? Mm-hmm. Where are they on getting rid of carbon equivalent emissions? Where are they when they come to diversity and inclusion? And that's what people are looking for. They're looking to see progress. And those companies and those products and services that can demonstrate that progress are going to win the customers and consumer seal of approval.
Now, of course, a lot of consumers have expressed their support both of sustainable products and their willingness to pay a little bit more in order to do that. As an entrepreneur in the egg business, you introduced an entire category, premium eggs, around some basic ideas about organic, the treatment of the animals and so forth. What did you learn from your experience at each of those egg startups that you've been through that relate and inform how you think about sustainable business today?
Well, it really ties into the value proposition of the customer and the sustainable trends that were there that customers really wanted. So it was really a fast-growing niche of a large growing category that was multi-billion dollars. And it's turned into a multi-billion dollar category by themselves because of the consumer drilling down to people that want to have some wholesomeness. They want to have vegetarian fed. They want to have better nutrition. They want cage-free and then free range and then organic consumer that's interested in an organic lifestyle, and then going into pasture raised as well. So that each customer in those niches really would drill down and be interested in their specific attributes.
Now, I read your book, and you go into a lot of detail about the research you did about the naming of different products. Did you find that you had to educate consumers about these sustainable values, or did they inform the naming by telling you what they already valued? In other words, is this something we have to teach people, or is it something that we need to follow people on?
Well, it's really you're cutting in the beginning of what people are really looking for. And then the education part of it is the differences of the different product. You can imagine going to an egg aisle or a dairy aisle, and you stop there and you're totally confused. And a normal consumer will take 7 seconds to make a decision. So what you want to do is succinctly and clearly clarify exactly what is on that package that is going to drive your sustainable consumer. So it is a form of being there for them, as well as educating them.
So what advice do you have for a business that wants to begin to be more sustainable and needs to communicate that aspiration to the customer as well as listen to the customer to determine where they want to go?
Well, what they can do is realize, first of all, if they want to be more sustainable, that I laid out in my book an implementation model, a 5-step model of knowing where you are, planning, and then going into the plan and then transforming. So the first step is to take an assessment of where you are. The second step is to say, how do we, from a competitive value proposition basis, measure up with the competition, and how can we have a strategy on growth based on that? And then it's a matter of realizing that you can save an awful lot of money with implementing sustainability, and you can have a tremendous amount of increased revenue. So it's a real win-win in this situation.
And, you talk about the increased revenue. That's particularly important, looking at this as a growth issue. What benefits do you tell executives who are considering embracing sustainability that they can expect to develop as a result of that investment?
Well, it all depends on what type of executive you're talking to. If you're talking to an innovator, then it's an issue of telling them the great benefits of going into this segment and the growth trends and where other people are not. Mm-hmm. If you're talking to someone who owns a very large business and they want to know why they should get in, and it's a very simple answer. Either you take care of the customer or the customer is going to go elsewhere.
Yeah.
So that's their motivator.
So customers really do have a lot of influence in where the shape of the future of the economy. It's just that if they don't change, things don't change. Is that a pretty accurate read of what you're saying about their?
Exactly right. They're just going to gravitate to what they want. You can't fight social, sustainable gravity. And that's just a matter of fact. So you might as well realize that, target it, key into it, and go with it.
So what do you tell somebody who says, I don't have to worry about sustainability. I've got an unassailable market position. I don't have to worry about this. Like maybe an oil executive, for instance. What would you tell them is going to happen to their business?
Well, it's an issue where if you have someone that's in the oil business, that you got to be a little bit smart, guys. You've made an awful lot of money in oil or oil refinery. You might as well invest in sustainability and other products. So as your market share gets eroded and you start losing market share, at least you'll gain in other areas.
So basically hedge their bets at this point by beginning to embrace sustainability, even if they don't feel a passion for it.
It's a matter of prudent and smart business practices.
Okay. So let's shift gears. A lot of the folks who listen to the show see opportunities in their local region to start a business. What's your advice to an entrepreneur who wants to disrupt a market that's already dominated by a cartel that enforces unsustainable practices?
Well, it's the advice is that if you're passionate about your value proposition and you can get an expert growth advisor, either like myself or someone else locally, that can help you get to where you need to go. Mm-hmm. And you really need to take your value proposition, tie it into a competitive analysis, and drive that into a strategy in order to see how you can be successful.
What are some ways that you would test the viability of that strategy early on and without spending a lot of money, obviously, since a lot of folks are doing these things on a shoestring?
Yeah, well, I've got 2 chapters on the book. One is the simple way is a 25 question survey that isn't going to cost you a lot of money. Mm-hmm. I mean, my favorite analysis of that is if you go to my book, the front cover, that is a cover that I was part of the 20%. I didn't want this cover, but my customers wanted the cover. So when I did a market study on what book I should have, I went to my customer base, and my customer base said, I want this. In the same way, you have to take a step back and say, I think I've got this great idea. Let me go to some target customers and ask them about it, and ask about their buying habits, ask about what they spend, what they would do, would they consider buying this or going into this. That's the first step, is getting 25 people in your target market and test out your hypothesis.
That's great and very straightforward advice. Now, let's turn this around and think about it a little bit more from the established business perspective. And you've said, we have to move past just talking about sustainability on Earth Day or during Earth Month, and move to an ongoing practice of sustainability. How do you help a company make those changes, and in particular educate customers about those changes so that the values that they've decided to embrace are easily comparable and can help them differentiate from the competition?
It's really being able to, from a marketing standpoint, realize that customers want this. They want to buy local. They want to see the local tag. They want to see that you're treating your employees well. They would love to see some sort of fair trade. They would love to see information on your diversity, maybe on your website. They would love to see where you are and that you take environmental sustainability seriously and how you're implementing that. So you have a great opportunity over all aspects, and also how you're giving back. Are you giving back? Are you giving back to time, talents, and money to causes that matter? Are you giving back to your local food bank? Are you giving back with your time? Are you working and you're part of a company that actually allows and mandates that people actually do work and give back to the community and the environment?
So authentically being part of the community rather than treating it as something that, like an iron mine that you extract value from but don't put anything back into, is really a key to the perception that the company is responsible and participating in making progress as a society.
Yeah, that really where it cuts. You can cut through, and I know you probably spend a lot of time trying to figure out who's just talking a good game and who's doing a good game.
Yep.
Well, when I see companies that have policies where the entire employee base is out there mandated to give time and efforts and money to make the world a better place, that is, to me, the big cutting edge to say that these people really care.
So what advice do you have for people who are, the problem is that nobody's really sustainable yet. We're only on a journey towards sustainability. And there's always a gap between what the consumer would like to be able to do and the reality of where the business is. How do you communicate that? Is it a way, do you have to say, hey, this is really a challenge and we need your partnership in order to solve this sustainability problem?
What they really need to do is take a look at what they have to do on an incremental basis to show improvement in a materiality situation as to what aspects of sustainability that matter to your customer and improve on that situation, be environmental, social governance, locally produced products, eliminating poverty, education, responsible practices, and therefore you can measure the improvement and actually transform your behavior and as a partnership with your customer. So you take in feedback on your website and you also are transparent on your website of what you stand for and what you're actually doing and how you're improving.
So in terms of measurement, the advice, and it's advice that I think is well taken, is to use science-based metrics because it's easier to compare one company to another when they're both using the same third-party validated information. How much carbon are you emitting? How equitable is your workforce? Is that really that is part of transparency just acknowledging the reality around you and allowing people to make direct comparisons between you and your competition?
I think it's really an issue on the innovators. They need to lead in that regard.
Okay.
We did it with certified humane third-party audits, on verification of humane standards. We also did it with showing that we were purchasing locally or producing locally with products, and we were very transparent in that way. We were very transparent on food safety, so you could actually trace back exactly where the food was coming from. You can do that on all measures of sustainability.
So how did you tell that story? Was it just on the packaging, or did you also have marketing campaigns that were explaining the information on the package?
It's both. So you'd have it on the packaging, and then you'd have shelf talkers, and then you'd also put it on your website. And sometimes if you were introducing something new, maybe you drop it in marketing materials, or you'd put it in your ad, or for that matter, you do a press release, or for that matter, you do a full PR campaign. But you wanted to get to your customers that really care, and that you're a company that really cares.
So how can a customer who looks at a company and says, I really like where they're going, but I'd like them to change whatever, what steps should they take to be influential on the companies that they purchase from? Is it a matter of writing letters, or is it boycotting? There are a lot of different degrees on the spectrum of customer activism. What do you recommend to get the right response?
Well, I think nothing talks bigger than a chorus of revenue.
Okay.
And knowing that, we love you, but we just simply can't purchase your product, and your competition, I'm going to your competition because they care more. And those calls to customer service, when they're not screaming and angry and irrational, but just informational, they go a long way. They get looked at by something's going to affect revenue. Believe me, the top C-suite management is looking at it.
So taking it another step, what about investor activism? Is that a strategy that you would recommend to change a company?
Yeah, you certainly can. And once again, I would take a look at investor activism, and certainly start out with a group that would approach companies and bring forth their concerns in a measured, structured way, and give them an opportunity to come to the table. And therefore, it's not a situation where it starts out acrimoniously, but more like a partnership dialogue discussion. And then if after a long time things aren't working out, there has to be a measure of patience on that. And that's what I would strongly advise, is that be patient about it and sit down with them. And certainly the more they purchase and the more they own of a company, the more they can drive an ear. But being reasonable and present the business case is a very, very good way to say, we're a stakeholder, these things matter, and we want to know what you're doing about them.
So earlier you mentioned the whole challenge of just trying to understand what's for real in terms of commitments and not. And it's become very common for companies and governments, particularly around Earth Day, to announce new CO2 emissions goals. And these things are a decade or 2 decades or more in the future. How do you recommend customers try to distinguish between legitimate announcements and window dressing announcements? What should they be looking at?
They should be really taking a look at leadership's commitment. And it's hard to see in the company. But when you have leaders that speak, and I've got a podcast where I highlight sustainable leaders, And when the ones that truly care are the ones that they can ferret out right away, that the leadership does truly care. And you can look at it through their, not just their speeches, but their actions in their company, and how they are very transformative and transparent as to what they're doing.
I'm reminded, I had a conversation with a CEO and a CFO at a publicly traded company. They both actually got teary about their environmental commitment. And it was at that moment I knew they were for real. But of course, I had the advantage of sitting right there with them and seeing that. When you talk about, say, for instance, listening to a speech, how do you distinguish between happy carbon talk and real commitments? Are you looking for them citing specific metrics, or is it how they express themselves emotionally?
It's where they are really, Mitch, on the spectrum. Mm-hmm. And really, you want to improve everybody. So you'll have people that are passionate and teary-eyed and really are metrically doing everything they possibly can to improve things. And then you have people there that say, well, if it's going to save me money, I'm for it. Mm-hmm.
But that's real too.
Yeah, it's real. But it's like, okay, I'll meet you part way. And if it saves me money, I'm for it. But if it's not going to save me money, then, hey, we're here to make a profit and we got to report back and all that. So, I have not run into any executives that have said that, we're just going to bury our head in the sand. We're going to say, let's see what we can do to try to meet you part way. But that's basically where we're at.
So do you find that the current structure of corporate sustainability reporting, which is primarily regulatory oriented, is something that consumers can use to make good judgments, or does it need additional translation?
Well, I know it can be very confusing for consumers to figure out what is real speak and what is nonsense. Mm-hmm. But certainly when a consumer buys stuff and they do have verified third parties that are coming out and in favor of it, if they're transparent on the number of C-suite and company executives that they have that are diverse, mm-hmm. women, and my number was 55%. To me, it was pretty easy. You say, what's the number? What is it? And then you translated it. But if you can gain that true commitment and true message that companies have, they're more than likely going to get your business. And that's what I advise executives and companies to do. Be transparent, be direct, and you're gonna do a lot better than simply trying to obfuscate.
Well, and obviously, I think the other one is be honest, because there are people looking very carefully at this who are increasingly sophisticated. Let me ask you this as a kind of a closing question. What are you doing in your personal life and in your spending to encourage sustainable businesses that you want to see stay the course?
What I like to see the most when I'm doing is, certainly there's always room for incremental improvement. Mm-hmm. And that goes from the LED light bulbs to just got brand new energy efficient windows. Mm-hmm. And that at that level, and then taking involvement for planning to change your power as soon as the depreciation life is over of your existing heating source. And then in addition to that, take a look at the cars you drive. Mm-hmm. And, for me, I've got a podcast, Sustainable Leadership and Disruptive Growth. And I'm there spending my time and my money in cooperation with Forbes Books to highlight great sustainable achievements. So that's what I'm doing. And I know I can do more. And I know that every day there are ways to analyze what you're doing and improve it.
Well, I think that's great advice from the perspective of both the individual consumer and somebody thinking about their own business and changing it. And of course, we'll point to the podcast in the link to the story. I want to thank you, David, for joining us on the show today.
Well, I'm delighted to be here, and I just love helping people get to where they need to go. And thank you very much, Mitch, very much.
Well, thank you. Well, folks, we've been talking with David Radlo. He's the author of the new book, Principles of Cartel Disruption. You can find out more about that at davidradlo.com. And we also urge you to check out his podcast, Sustainable Leadership and Disruptive Growth with David Radlo. This is Earth911, Sustainability in Your Ear. I'm Mitch Ratcliffe, and we'll be back with another innovator interview soon. In the meantime, folks, take care of yourself, take care of one another, and let us all take care of this beautiful planet of ours. We'll be back soon.